there going to be an unequal impact of generative AI's use on the workforce, do you think?
Well, when you look at what is happening in the world of AI and where the applications, at least today, are, it's about automating jobs that are largely held by women. It just so happens that those jobs tend to be more administrative in nature and are perfect and ripe for automation. And so it'll be really interesting to see what the data shows, especially if this does become legislation in New York.
It is, yeah.
How it impacts women and how disproportionately that impact then creates further gender inequities.
How is your technology perhaps trying to play a counterforce here?
Yeah, if you take a step back and think about today how the models are being trained from a generative AI perspective, those large models, whether it's the OpenAI models or is Gemini or Cloud, have been trained largely from data of the internet. And when you look at what is the data on the internet, the large swaths of data, of course, are Wikipedia, Reddit, GitHub, popular pop gender data sets, which tend to be highly male dominant. Then you look at the other data sets, whether that's related to academic papers, publications around business, books and use cases, healthcare, where again, up until recently, women were not even included in those clinical data sets. Really, there's not a lot around caregiving, unpaid labor, right? So when you look at what that data set highly represents or overrepresents men than it does women. So that is the basis of the training data sets for majority of the models today. So the counterforce for Uplevyl, what we're trying to do at Uplevyl is create the world's largest gender data set so that this gender data set actually represents women, both contextually from an experience perspective, understands women's challenges around career, health, wealth, and more importantly, can be that counterforce whereby, if in theory someday if we could blend both those data sets, then we'll have that gender equality across the broader training sets.
Shubhi, it's really interesting. We're hearing from the Grindr CEO saying they're training their large language models to be more gay. From the perspective of maybe you start to counteract the bias within the applications that come from the large language models, but what about just unsaid biases about women and actually adopting this technology? Are we being first movers? Are people being early adopters in the workforce, do you think, at the same level as men?
Yeah, this is a disturbing number that, I keep seeing where it feels like the gap was maybe 20 percentage points between men adopting, and I'm talking about generative AI, not just AI broadly, but just even generative AI tools versus women. Part of that has to do with, if you look at broader adoption of women in terms of big tech, yes, women might be on those platforms, but are not nearly as active in terms of posting, sharing comments, reacting than men are. And so and why is that? Because, when you look at a lot of these platforms, and there has been a mass exodus of women, is because of the misogyny, the narcissism, the sexualization, etc. Right? So there is this inherent issue that we have around trusting tech, and that's bleeding itself into also using these generative AI tools. So a big part of that is just, can I trust this? Or if I use this tool, then can I actually say this is my work? So there's that bigger issue. Right? So there have been impediments to adoption for women.
In 30 seconds, Shubhi, is it getting better?
No, it's not getting better. It's actually widening. So, or said differently, maybe women are still at the same rate of adoption and men are adopting it faster.